Monster fishing. Hashtag stop overfishing.
The issue we're going to be talking about today is monster fishing, or in other words, overfishing. Monster fishing consists of big boats sweeping the ocean completely inconsiderately in regards to the ecosystem they are disturbing. In an article by EU Business, it was reported that the environmental group Greenpeace launched a campaign on Tuesday, 28th of October, against 20 European monster boats that they felt were using a range of tricks to dangerously overfish the world's oceans. The 20 vessels contribute mainly to stock depletion. In a summary of their report, a Greenpeace representative said, "Our oceans and fish stocks are in deep crisis, with too many large and destructive vessels chasing too few fish." The report was entitled, "Monster Boats, the Scourge of the Oceans."
A common access resource is a rivalrous non-exclusive resource, meaning that there's a limited supply of the resource. However, everybody has access to it, generally causing that people abuse the resource, and if not doubt, if one would run out of the resource.
International waters support the idea that everyone has access to the good. This makes it non-excludable and herewith non-rivalrous because anyone has the opportunity to take a net and collect seafood. Monster boats further reinforce this because there are no real limitations on how much can be taken because no one is the owner of the ocean. This means that regulations cannot really be regulated, in fact, and therefore not created, making it a common access good.
The tragedy of the common is defined as when common resources are being exploited to their fullest potential in order to maximize own self-gain, consequently resulting in the resource being depleted. In regards to our resource, which is fishing, the tragedy at hand is overfishing. In this situation, where fish stocks are reduced below their predefined levels due to rapid fishing activities, the issues with allowing fish mortality to reach a high level are many. First, it results in low biological growth rates and critically low community biomass levels. Both these factors would decrease dramatically. Secondly, another problem is that the ability for nature to restore the number of fish lost is partially dependent on whether the ecosystems are still in a state to allow fish numbers to build again, meaning that it could be very difficult to restore the numbers already lost. Lastly, the changes in a species' composition affect the whole ecosystem as a whole, meaning that there could be shifts in equilibriums. For example, if a particular fish species were overfished to a higher extent than another, the relationship between these two fish would change, perhaps irreversibly. The fish species that was depleted might never re-establish its population if the now larger population of the other fish species threatened to compete for the same food sources. With this in mind, it's crucial to understand that overfishing cannot be allowed so as to not let the damage go beyond repair.
Currently, overfishing is a big issue. Because of the greater demand than the supply, we have to regard fish as a competitive resource. International waters allow free access and in this way something like free production. This means that fishermen are not really required to invest in order to receive goods to supply and hence find an easy way into the market, thus abolishing the principle of excludability. Many countries rely on seafood as a prime part of their nutrition. Others capture live fish and place them in aquariums, and this requires them to still be alive, making the process of catching them even more challenging. Furthermore, omega-3 and other oils are vital components to our health and body functions. They can also be used to create glues and other merchandise. Also, pearls are greatly sought after to make jewelry, creating a full spectrum of goods to be created with this supply. This further supports the idea that the extraction of seafood is rather cheap, if not to say free, and hence is a good market to enter because there is a lot of money that can be made from it.
If the amount that is fish is not curbed, some scientists believe that all seafood will run out by 2048, causing an issue since there wouldn't only be a market failure but a complete collapse in the market, since there would be no seafood. However, if the amount of fish is decreased to the point where the fish can restart populating, which would require the demand or the supply to drastically go down, it would allow the fish to supply to go to a point where the overfishing stops being a major issue.
This is a market failure diagram to demonstrate the negative externality in regards to our product.
Negative externality of reduction because the fishing of the animals is making the oceans become deprived of seafood. It also creates pollution and harms habitats, thus affecting third parties.
There is a shift to the left in the supply curve because more is produced than there should be, if you take the third party suffering into consideration. This hence means that QE is greater than QSO, thus creating a dead will for a loss because the market is no longer revolving around the equilibrium and the supply no longer equals demand.
A welfare loss is created that third parties such as coral reefs, small fishing industries, and other sea creatures suffer from because of the overfishing that these monster boats create. You can attempt to remedy this externality through different solutions that bring the QE curve closer to the QSO curve, which is the socially optimal level. One solution to this could be a corrective tax. Of course, we know that a tax on fishing itself would not work because it would not only be difficult to monitor but also near impossible to enforce, as fishing happens on international waters and every country would have to agree to it. However, you can put a tax on those who manage the resource once it is out of the water, meaning the people who both clean the fish and sell it to the market. By applying a corrective tax on the production of a good, the quantity supplied will decrease, thus reducing the quantity demanded to a more socially optimal level. Additionally, the supply curve with a tax will hopefully shift the line either close to the marginal social cost curve, if not completely equal to it if the tax is high enough. Unlike a tax on a good that is produced efficiently by the free market, the use of a corrective tax will fix the market failure and negative externality and help us achieve a higher level of efficiency. Furthermore, the equilibrium will be brought to a more socially optimal level, benefiting the fish.
In order to get the market back into its equilibrium, there has to be a shift of the supply curve to the left so that QE moves closer to the point of QSO, at which the negative externalities affecting the third parties are taken into consideration. In theory, one way that this could be solved is through privatization of the ocean, in which each country could get a part of it, herewith breaking the international aspect of it. Assigning private ownership over a resource creates an incentive among private owners to protect and manage the use in a sustainable manner, so as to benefit from its existence into the future. By abolishing international territory, a more rivalrous competition would be created as to who receives what and who gets to benefit from it. The owners of this then gets to implement regulations and laws, possibly making it more exclusive because it no longer is a public good. This solution would be unbeneficial though, because fishing is done on an international territory. Some people would then have a larger benefit from this than others. Areas where there is an ocean and fish in general will be able to receive return profits, while others will no longer be able to participate in this market. On the other hand though, fish colonies would be able to reproduce more again and would no longer face the extinction. Because of other factors that influence the fish's life, such as pollution in the water and other health risks that they face, it would be hard to measure this. Hence, the solution of privatization in the ocean is irrelevant and unbeneficial to stakeholders. Furthermore, if the sea is divided into multiple parts, each private owner can make his or her own regulations regarding their territory, which would result in not only the rivalry of people competing for a patch of water, but also between the owners, because production on one patch may be easier than on another. The graph clearly shows this negative externality of production. Fishing the fish is what harms them, and because of this is such a big problem that requires the whole world to come together, which will be hard to do because countries needing more fish will be harder to convince. A shift in the supply line would therefore only technically work on a graph, but would be harder to act upon in reality.
Tradable permits, what would work with carbon emissions, it loses its largest benefit compared to carbon emissions, which is the fact that with overfishing it doesn't incentivize people to reduce the amount of fishing. Since it is a product and not an externality, while still having the benefit of that will set the amount of fish that will be legally fished. It does not, however, require more effort by the governing body to track who has how many permits and threat an increase in the number of permits. With taxes, a benefit is that money which would be collected could be donated to charities which would help fish repopulate. Since permits would set a set amount of fish which can be fished, it would be beneficial for the fish population, but it would be a fairly heavy blow to all fish markets, especially on countries which economies rely on fishing. If the country is a less developed country, with its economy relying heavily on fishing, would either do its best to have not the permits implemented, and if they are, turn a blind eye if they are implemented or not. Based on our research, we concluded that corrective taxes would be the best solution, since it would require the least effort on the governing bodies, as well as it would create an international hazard with how much territory is allocated to each country. The issue with permits is that it loses incentive, since one does not have the incentive to decrease the amounts of fishing, since it's the product they are selling. However, it would set a specific amount of fish that would be collected. On top of that, government permits would cause extra work compared to the other two, since they would have to open a new bureau dedicated to monitoring that none of the permits duplicate. Since privatization would cause an international headache and government permits lose its largest benefits, as well as a new bureau would have to be set up. One fairly large benefit as well is that the taxes collected could be spent on fishing habitats. These reasons led our group to conclude that taxes would be the most beneficial, since the only one which didn't have extra issues compared to the stock examples.
In conclusion, we would like to stress the gravity of this issue. Because of the international aspect of the waters that it affects, it required us to come together and find a solution that is mutually beneficial but will save third parties from suffering. Please remember that it is our job to protect our world from damage.
Thank you for watching!